Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Common Room Views podcast. This is season 4, episode 6, I believe, and if I'm incorrect, I'm going to edit this out. So, welcome back to the interview series. As always, you're joined by me. And in this interview series, if you're new here, we call on some exciting guests to have engaging conversations about what they've done in the past, what they're doing right now, and what their future ambitions and aspirations are. On today's episode, today's guest is someone who I've had the pleasure of being friends with for over a decade, and pretty much half my life at this point. They are an extremely talented individual. She has continued to show the importance of hard work and dedication towards the dreams and goals and aspirations you have, and this perseverance has taken her from strength to strength. And so today, we're going to be speaking about what has led her to what she's doing right now, her experiences along the way, and what she aims to do in the future. So it's my pleasure to call on Vidisha.
Hi, that felt like a star of the week introduction. I was like ready to come and collect my certificate.
That's such a throwback as well, like the William Thomas Star of the Weeks. But yeah, it's a pleasure to have you on. And yeah, as I mentioned, Vidisha is someone who I've known for half my life now. You know, we went to primary school together. I believe you joined, is it year 5 or year 6?
I in year 2, so I'm gonna take that personally, but I think we only met in year 5 or 6.
Maybe that's what I meant, right.
Yeah.
I became acquainted with you in year 5 or year 6. But yeah, I mean, you then left for a. Okay, so let's just start from the beginning. So yeah, we went to primary school together.
Yeah.
I think as you mentioned, we knew each other for a couple of years, and you then moved away for high school, if I remember correctly. And I say
Yeah.
moved away in the sense that generally, for most people from our primary school, there were one of two high schools in the area that everyone went to. I went to one of them, and then there was a second one relatively close by where everyone else went to. So initially, how did you find that when you were moving away from mostly everyone? I don't think there was anyone or relatively many people that went to the high school that you went to.
No, there really wasn't anyone. Funny enough, so obviously primary school left, went somewhere else. Secondary school, I also changed secondary school as well from year 11 to year 12. And even though I was there for 5 years, I didn't feel as sad as I did leaving my secondary school as I did leaving primary school. Like I remember the day I left primary school, me and my friends, we were in tears. We were like, "Oh my God, we're gonna be best friends forever and ever, and I'm never gonna forget you." And
Yeah.
now we just follow each other on Instagram. But the transition was really tricky. I think because the reason I moved away is because I sat an exam called the 11 plus, and I went to a school that was supposed to be, I guess, like a competitive school. It wasn't really something I was aiming for as such. I kind of just sat the exam. My parents said, do it if you want to, and if you want to go, you can go. That's kind of how it was for me. But I was really sad about going, firstly. And then when I got there, because everybody was so smart, like it felt like everyone was smarter than me or as smart as me. And that was a big change from primary school. I think it was the first time that I'd experienced something like that. So
Yeah.
at first, I really struggled. And also going from a school in East London, primary school, to going to a school in like Southend-on-Sea,
Yeah.
the demographic difference is wild. Like I had so many culture shocks, even though I grew up in this country. I had so many culture shocks going to secondary school in Southend. So that was also difficult.
Yeah.
But overall, I had a good experience, I think, of secondary school and sixth form as well.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned about leaving primary. I remember I remember the last day super vividly as well, and I think at
Really?
times throughout the day, there were obviously people getting up and just like bursting into tears, and I think the teachers even had like they cleared out almost like a room where you could go, and like cry almost. It was, yeah, everyone was super emotional. I remember the whole day I was like, come on, what are you guys all about, right? And I remember the minute I walked out those gates, and do you remember Finley?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember him and I walked out the gates, and we were literally smiling, we were happy, we were fine. and we just looked at each other, and he burst into tears, and I burst into tears, and I was like,
Oh.
yeah, that's good. It overwhelms you at that point. And it's also funny how you said that, you know, you leave primary school and you think, I mean, I was there since nursery, so that was, what, 8 years, right, at that school. And
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you know, these are my friends for life, you know. And as you said, like, I just follow them on Instagram now. There are a handful of people, not even a handful, there's like, yeah, maybe 4 or 5 people from primary that I regularly keep into contact with, and apart from that, you know, you just don't speak to people at all. But yeah, it's interesting what you said about the demographic change as well. As you said, East London is very, like, you know, it's extremely diverse. But honestly, I would say white people are a minority. Like, at least in the high schools I went to, they were, like, if you looked at the ratio of white people to non-white people, it's like 80 to 20. They are actually a minority. And so, yeah, it's, again, when you move outside of London, or outside of these populated cities like Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, things like that, you really notice how it's not diverse at all. So I can imagine when you went to, you said Southend-on-Sea, yeah, you were the minority at that point again.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's, so you mentioned you moved sixth form.
Yeah.
Was that, like, again in that same area, or did you move back toward London?
Like a little bit closer to London. So I went to sixth form in a school in Chelmsford, and again, I feel like every transition in my life I've had has been huge. So primary school to secondary school, from East London to Southend. Then the school I went to Southend was an all-girls school. And the school I went to sixth form, the lower school for that school was all boys, and the sixth form was mixed. But basically, everybody in the lower school would automatically get in for sixth form. And if you were applying from a different school, you had to apply like as an external. So there were mostly boys and very few girls. So I went from an all-girls school to being one of the very few girls in the entire school, taking all STEM and economics subjects. So again, massive transition for sixth form as well.
Yeah. Oh, so what did you take for A-levels? What were your subjects?
I took biology, chemistry, maths, and EPQ, and economics.
Biology, chemistry, chem and math is a dangerous combination.
It wasn't. I think maths was just a difficult subject at A level. I mean, you did it as well, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, but yeah. Actually, funnily enough though, I don't think there was a single person who did chemistry at A level in Oaks that didn't cry once in those 2 years. Everyone had such a terrible time doing chemistry.
Really?
Now, personally, out of the 3 sciences, I hate chemistry. Like, it's my least favorite. But I'm not even speaking on bias here. Like, there were people in genuine tears all year round from chemistry. Now, admittedly, obviously, the teaching in Oaks is quite poor anyway, so, you know, whatever. But, yeah, no, that's why I say it was quite rough in general. Now, 2 things with A-levels. First of all, were you one of those people that, like myself, who picked A-levels because they knew what they wanted to do after that, or did you kind of go into A-levels thinking, I'm going to pick generally what I like, and that leaves me with open options, and then sort of through A-levels you figured out what it is that you actually wanted to do at university?
No, I think by the end of year 11, I had decided that this is what I wanted to do, and I picked my A-levels accordingly.
Yeah. What if you could think of like a moment or something that probably brought about that, and you were like, okay, no, this is exactly what I want to do? Because for me, for example, up until I think GCSEs, maybe year 10, 11, I was quite set on aerospace engineering. And then through that process, I was like, maybe not so much engineering, I'd rather just do straight physics because I prefer the theory. But again, it's all along the same branch, it's the same grade requirements, it's the same subjects you need at A-level. So I think I've always had that from a young age. I've been very infatuated with space physics. I went to the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, so I've always had that. So can you think of a certain moment, or just generally, where that kind of pushed you toward what you wanted to do?
So funny enough, this is the first line on my personal statement that I set up for my medicine application. Is the moment that I realized I wanted to do it. So this bit I didn't write, and then I'll tell you what I did write. So I had no idea what I wanted to do. Like I thought for the longest time that I wanted to be the prime minister of the country. Like that was my thing growing up. Like in primary school, if you had asked me what do you want to be when you grow up, I would have said I'm going to study history at Oxford and then be the prime minister. But that's when I didn't know that politics existed. I didn't know how politics worked.
Yeah.
And then when I got into secondary school, then I realized, like, oh, you have to be a politician to do this. I was like, oh no, forget that. Like, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's too long.
That's long. It's like horrible. It's awful. Politicians are. Anyway, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. And I pretty much trialed and errored most careers, I think. Like, I thought about teaching. I thought about going into marketing. I thought about banking, computer science. Like I tried everything. And for the longest time after that, the one I took seriously was law, because I always knew whatever job I have, I wanted to do something where I'm interacting with people. And I feel fulfilled at the end of the day. Like I've helped somebody.
Yeah.
So that was at the center of all my options. And we don't have a single doctor in the family. So I will hopefully be the first. As long as I make it through this degree. So my mum used to say growing up, she used to tease me and be like, oh, why don't you just become a doctor? And I was like, I don't want to do that. That's like so stereotypical brown person thing. Like I want to do something different. I want to be different. And I've ended up picking medicine, which is exactly what she suggested.
Yeah.
And the way that happened is, so every time I researched one of these careers, like when I actually researched law, I found it so boring. Like it was cool to hear about, but I didn't find that like spark. Same with computer science. I always enjoyed coding. I mean, I still code for the course that I'm doing now, but it's not something that I like feel so passionate about. Like I don't sit there doing my code like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I didn't have that.
Yeah.
But when I was in year 10 biology and we were studying the brain, we looked at the case of this guy called Phineas Gage, who was I think he was a railroad worker who was in an accident, and he had like a pole through his brain. And despite having like a pole put through his brain during a train accident, he survived and he was completely fine. But his personality completely changed after that accident. And we had just studied about the different parts of the brain and how they're supposed to work. And then you got to see somebody who, you know, something has gone wrong. And you got to match up what you had learned with what has gone wrong. And you understood why, because we had just learned different parts of the brain and what they do. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. Like, it actually makes sense. And then after that, for homework, we had to go off and research different brain conditions, like 1 or 2. I went and researched like 10. Like, I was so excited, couldn't stop reading. I think that's when, like, I've always been a bit of a nerd, but I think, like, that's when the nerd side of me, like, really peaked. I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever. I could do this for the rest of my life. And that's what made me decide that I wanted to do medicine. That moment specifically was the true point.
And actually, I love that you brought up Phineas Gage as well, because I did psychology as well at A-level.
Yeah.
He's one of the case studies. And for those people that haven't, who don't know who that is, it's honestly such an interesting read, and I would say definitely go check that out. But yeah, it's I see what you mean, and actually I remember us having a conversation maybe in the last couple of years where we were speaking about my interest for physics and your interest for like biology, and you liken like how I was saying, like, I feel super interested understanding space and physics and, you know, the interworkings at such a large scale, and you liken that to the fact where within the body it's sort of the similar thing, where it's such a complex network within the body, and it's just as incredible at, you know, a smaller scale relatively, and yeah, I think it's so great that you had like a defining moment that you can remember at such a young age that then pushed you forward. Because what I came to realize during A-levels was not a lot of people have that sense of purpose or direction from the get-go. There were a lot of people that chose A-levels just for the sake of choosing them, and even by year 13 or year 12 when we were sending off our UCAS applications, they didn't know what they wanted to do. And to me that idea was so alien that, how can you be in year 12, how can you be doing A-levels and not have an idea of what you want to do further? But I guess it's sort of a privilege to have found an interest at such a young age and then be pushed in it and supported through that. In terms of your A-level experience as well, how did you fare with COVID? Because one of the longest podcast episodes we did 2-3 years ago was on COVID and how much I abhorred at how my school dealt with that. And I think it varied because a lot of schools were a lot more lenient and understanding. Oaks Park was extremely shit in accommodating for students. They, my favorite thing to always tell people is, I don't know if you remember, you did math as well. You know how the government at one point said, okay, well, you don't give them like a full test, right? That's not fair for them.
Yeah.
You can, it was a teacher assessed anyway, but they said, you're not going to have to sit full papers. And then my math department made us sit a full paper, so like a full 3 series paper. And they were these 3 papers more or less decide what your grade is. And at the end of year 13. And I was just like, you can't be serious. Like, I've had, a year of my education in A-level was just completely wasted because of COVID. The teaching is subpar as it is. And now you're making me sit a proper, I think it was like a October 2020 series or something at the time. And they're like, you're sitting these 3 papers and it probably makes up about 80% of our assessment towards your grades. So how was it for you? Was your school a lot more lenient with COVID, or did you have a similar experience as I did?
I think we did have to sit exams. However, the exams didn't include the topics which we hadn't covered yet, which was fair in my opinion. And I have to say, I was very lucky that I went to a school that coincidentally also did well rankings wise, so they could justify giving out a lot of A stars and a lot of A's. So I think for most subjects I probably would have got the same, other than economics, which, okay, I don't even know if I should be saying this on the podcast, but I think I did a lot better because it was COVID and because, it was only covering what we'd done so far, and you can kind of guess what sort of things are probably coming up. So I think I probably would have got the same grade, but marks-wise, how well I did would never have happened if we actually set an economics paper. I think overall the school was honestly really good. Teaching online was not the best, but they did the best with what they could at the time. After COVID, the teachers were always honestly really supportive. You could go and speak to anyone about how you were feeling, and I felt like they genuinely wanted you to get into university. So if, for example, if your grade from a certain paper wasn't as good as it should have been, they would try and help you with something would it be doing an extra test, or would it be, I don't know exactly what they did for people, but whatever they said, I felt like these people want me to go to university. They're not going to mess up my offer. So I have to say I was happy in that case.
I'd say that is definitely a stark contrast to what we had in Oaks, but no, it's good that you supported. And actually, it's funny you mentioned that your tests included only what you'd covered up until that point. My school decided to just cram in all the content so that they technically could just give full papers without having to cut anything out. So I remember, obviously, calculus is the biggest part of A-level math, and I'm pretty sure we learned differentiation in a month. Oh no, sorry, integration. We learned integration in under a month. They crammed it in 2 weeks just so that they could say they'd done it, and then we could sit the papers. I just thought to myself, at that point, it's in God's hands. But yeah, so you, what unis did you apply to? What was your selection?
So I applied to Cambridge, King's College London, UCL, and St. George's, all for medicine. And then my 5th option was, I want to say neuroscience with psychology, or neuroscience at King's College London.
And just for the audience, what did you get into? What were the grade boundaries?
Grade boundaries.
Or requirements.
Okay, requirements. Grade-wise, it was A star AA, I think, for all of them, and for Cambridge it was A star A. And also for medicine, we have other requirements, like you have entrance exams. So you have the UCAT, which is like an IQ test on steroids, the BMAT, which is more of a science exam. You also have interviews. You have your personal statement where they check for things like, you know, your work experience, etc. And in interviews, they test your knowledge of medical ethics, um, like just a bunch of stuff. So there are like a lot of requirements that I think that are not on paper. Like they expect you to know about medical ethics, they expect you to know about current affairs, comment on things like COVID, how the government dealt with it, etc. So those were overall the requirements.
Yeah. And so, in terms of coming on to your uni experience, in general, how would you say you found the university and, you know, the types of people that you met, and how were your 3 years there?
Yeah. So I ended up going to King's College London. That was my second choice. I did not get into Cambridge, which was heartbreaking at the time because I really, really wanted to go. But I'm so glad that I went to King's. And I'm not just saying that because I got rejected from Cambridge. I still think I would have loved it. But I think being in London, I'm sure you will agree, is such a privilege. I'm
100%.
so happy that I got to go to university in London. Like more than it being King's, the fact that it was in such a good location was probably the highlight.
Yeah.
Um, the people that I met, oh, some amazing people, and some, you know, I think it's just medics. Like I'm saying this as a medical student.
Yeah.
I am not a big fan of medics in general and medic culture at competitive universities. I just feel like they take themselves so seriously, and I don't know why. And by take themselves seriously, I don't mean like care about their degree. That's fine, we all do. But the competitiveness, because it's so competitive to get into the course, I think that that doesn't leave some people. And they do
Yeah.
really snaky things to gatekeep resources, as to put other people down and things like that. So I met a lot of those medics, but luckily, as the years went on, I made most of my friends from outside of medicine, and then now I have really good medic friends as well who are normal people, which is
Yeah.
good.
No, and as you said, and I spoke about this with Ali last time. He also went to King's, and I was saying, out of all of the King's unis, and again, it's not just because I went to King's. I mean, King's was my second choice as well. I applied to UCL and they rejected me, but in hindsight, I'm so glad I got into King's because King's is actually such an incredible university. I think it's the best in terms of London campuses. I think it's hard to beat, but I think also the breadth of people that you meet at King's is just incredible. And as you said, also with physics, it's the same. I wouldn't say to the same extent, but you also have people that are slightly too pretentious and they take themselves too seriously. But again, I think that's, you know, just things you have to navigate. But yeah, I think as I said last time, so my degree experience or my issues with the department were there, but in terms of King's as a university, I would say I was very happy with where I went. Um, and so yeah, whilst you were there, what sort of societies were you a part of?
So in first year, I don't think I really joined any. I was doing a internship throughout first year, and I think first year was just so difficult for me that, as in like passing, I was finding even the content, like everything was so overwhelming. It was like
Yeah,
half
same here.
COVID,
Yeah,
new campus, new everything. I couldn't even join a proper society. The one thing I did do though in first year, okay, that was a lie. I did do one thing. I did the King's Diwali show,
yeah,
which is how I made a lot of my friends. I was in the Bollywood dance group, so that was really fun. That was from September till December, and then Jan to May, I didn't really have anything, just my internship. But second and third year, I joined the King's MedTech Society, which I'm still a part of, which is really cool. And I also joined the King's Hindu Society, which is, I have to say, highlight of my uni experience. You really missed out, and I made most of my best friends there. I have to say, it was so wholesome. So if you're going to King's, if you're at King's, go to the Hindu Society, even if you're not Hindu. It's so wholesome. It's amazing.
yeah. And actually, I did miss out. I was first year, of course, was super overwhelming as you mentioned because it was like half COVID. And genuinely, I think everything just hit me like a truck. Like the content, And I was just like, God, please just let me pass. Thankfully, first year didn't count toward my degree.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I can just get through this, then at least like I know what to do and what not to do. So yeah, in first year I was quite averse to joining societies, and also I was very much because I lived at home, right? So commuting an hour in and an hour home every single day, having 3, 4, 5, 6 hours of lectures. If I finished at like 5 or 6, I was like, can I just get home? Like I don't want to go to an event. I want to enjoy the time I have off. And to be fair, like the degree itself was just quite hectic in terms of lectures, and
Yeah.
and it wasn't until third year that I actually joined the society, which was partly because half my friends were on that society too, so it made life a bit easier. But
Yeah.
I, in hindsight, definitely would have wanted to join in society. And actually, as you mentioned it, you were super, super involved, and I could see all throughout, the time that you were there, just how much, like, how central you were to the organization of it. And yeah, part of me does regret not coming to it, but I guess I can only sit there and regret it now. But as you mentioned,
Yeah.
I would highly recommend, because just seeing that from the outside, it just seemed like such a wholesome atmosphere, for sure. And yeah, so what sort of when you first joined the society, you were in what sort of role, or were you just a general member of that society?
So when I joined, I applied for Seva officer, which is like a volunteering officer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I started. And then the head of the volunteering, I guess, team that year was quite absent. She had a lot going on. So I kind of just became the head of volunteering in my first year. So that's how I joined.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these societies and these committees. It's actually very, very friendly for the most part, right? Depending on the people
Yeah.
that are within the committee, and you could really work your way up quite quickly and be involved with a lot of
Yeah.
things that are happening. And I think a lot of people before they join a society are quite averse to meeting new people, and especially if you don't really know that many people on the committee or within the society. But it's such an enriching experience just meeting a lot of different people, and if you obviously have a good committee, you can do so many things. And this isn't even just about what you can put on your CV. Of course, that's great. It's saying that you were the head of Seva, or you were the head of just something and being involved in society. But I think it gives you a lot of different challenges and just a different perspective of apart from your usual academics. And so so that was your undergrad. And so at what point did you realize that, okay, I'm gonna pursue a master's? But what made you want to go back to Cambridge, or go, what, you rejected me once, let's see if you can do it again?
So I think from the first year that I was at at King's, and I found out it was an option to intercalate. So intercalate is when after your second or third year of med school, you can take a year to do an IBSc, which is an intercalated BSc. So you can do a year of women's health, a year of anatomy. Some people do some like crazy stuff, like they go and do business management at Imperial for a year. And because at King's, there's a bit of a loophole in that you intercalate after your third year. So it counts. So your first 3 years are technically equivalent to a degree, right? Because it's 3 years of an undergrad. So when I found out that I could do it, literally I think at the end of first year, start of second year, I was like, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. So from second year, I started building my application and then applied in third year. And for me, it was just that I know that when I finish med school, I probably will just want to get a job like ASAP. Like realistically, will I want to take the time out then to sit down and do a master's when I have a job waiting for me?
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of wanted to do it now. And if I didn't get into Cambridge, I probably would have just continued med school because I was not going to pay another ridiculous amount of tuition fees to, for me, it was like worth the investment. Because I already had King's, which is considered to be a good uni, on my CV. So for me, it had to like add something to that.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I decided to apply.
And in terms of fees, because I know there are a lot of people who, you know, might not pursue a master's or might not pursue that because of fees. Is this the same like fees as an undergrad, or do you pay more for that extra year?
Yeah. So my course specifically, I pay about the same. It's like 9K something.
Yeah.
However, I do have to say most master's courses are not that cheap. Like especially
Yeah.
not in London and in Oxbridge. Like they are some of them I've seen are like 30K,
Yeah.
40K
Yeah.
in places like Imperial. So I picked mine quite strategically. But most people I know are paying a lot higher than I
Yeah.
am to
And
be
is
here.
that because it's intercalated rather than being its own separate masters?
So this is actually a separate master's. I just applied without a degree and I'm here.
Right.
This
Right.
is like an actual master's. But because the master's that I'm doing, it's not really taught. It's not like I sit there and go to lectures. I'm doing research for the university and for the hospital. So because I'm doing work, they can't charge me that much because they're not like teaching me in the same,
Right.
like in a
Right.
formal way. So that's why my fees are a lot less
Yeah.
than
And
other
I mean, it's
people's.
there's probably a reason why this isn't advertised as much either. Like you have to,
Yeah.
you know the workings of, because the same way like I'm sure there are a lot of people going to King's, and even within when I was doing physics, there are a lot of different like variations of the physics degree that you can do that you just don't really know about, and it's not until you actually come to King's that those things are, they, I wouldn't even say they're advertised. You have to really search for them, which
Yeah.
I think is a slight downside, because I think these options should be made available and known to you from the beginning. It's a
Mhm.
bit harsh that you'd have to, speak to the right people just to figure it out in the first place. But, the more you know. And so you applied in, well, you started preparing yourself. And actually, you mentioned you started preparing your, application. What sort of things did you try and have on there?
Yeah, so because it's a research master's, the main thing they look for is research experience. So in second year, I pretty much just took every single opportunity that I could, research wise. If there was a project that I was seeing that was advertised, I would take it. Otherwise, I would go, like, if I had a professor that I was working with, if they had a project, I would get involved. And I was just doing as much as I could. The main thing that I did is there is something called a King's Undergraduate Research Fellowship, curve.
Curve, yeah.
Yeah, so that I did in the summer of second year, which was actually really good because they pay you. Well, now it's 1,500, but back then it was. I'm saying back then it was like
Back
2 years
then,
ago.
yeah.
But it was £1,000, and apparently they've increased it now to 1,500 because of
Yeah.
cost of living, which is really good. But I wish I had had that much. But yeah, I did that in like a med tech, in a med tech startup actually during second year. Um, So it was mostly just research stuff that I did. And then, so I could say in third year that I've done all of this and therefore I'm qualified.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
like, let's not get twisted. This is still competitive, like, as 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 even if you call it a loophole, things like that, and you're paying less, it's still a competitive thing to get into, and there are a lot of people who do know about it and who are still applying. And at the end of the day, you need to prepare yourself the best you can and take these opportunities and go that extra mile, because if you are, and one thing that I've learned now is, it's not just good enough anymore that you do your degree, you do well in your degree, and then move on. It's all about the extra things you're doing. And even to a certain extent, when you are in A levels applying for university, a friend of mine, well, one of my best friends actually, he straight A star student. He got 3 A stars at A level, A star in his EPQ as well. He didn't get into Cambridge. Like he got rejected. And academically and on paper, that's a star student, but they look for other things apart from that,
Hmm.
and that's what you need to do. You need to find out how you can differentiate yourself from the rest. And as you said, you started that early. You started that prep in second year, to try and do as many things as you could, which strengthens your application when you come to applying. So, what was the process of applying for Cambridge?
So the way that you apply, it's quite different to UCAS applications where you just send it off and then that's it. There is an application portal, but that comes a lot later in the process. So what you have to do is you have to find a supervisor for if you're doing a research master's, that is, not for taught masters. If you're doing a research master's, you have to find a supervisor. So basically, you have to go on the Cambridge website, look through all these people, and then see what kind of research they do, and you have to email them with your CV and like statement of interest saying that you want to do this and then project with them, and then invite them to have a call with you or something, and then they can speak to you and decide how to go forward with it. But that, I think that hurdle is like the biggest hurdle in the whole application process, because obviously if it's not centralized, like some people don't reply, some people will ignore your email. So that is the trickiest part. Some people will look at your CV and be like, that's rubbish, or like, that's not good enough, and then say no straight away, or speak to you and then say no. So you have to do that first. Then when your supervisor says yes, you have to draft like a research proposal. This is to the university to explain what project you'll be doing for the upcoming year. And then you also send your grades, CV, personal stuff, all of that boring stuff to the university. And then after that, you usually have like one or two informal sort of chats with your supervisor. So for that, I had to come like to Cambridge to visit, and we had a chat. And then once all of that is done and the university has like checked your grades and everything, your department interviews you. So somebody who's not your supervisor will interview you. Sometimes it's more than one person. I've had friends who have like 5 or 6 people in their interview, which is crazy. I was lucky; it was just one person there, and they can ask you like. There's no standardization for these interviews. Like they can ask you whatever they want. Some people will ask you questions. I've heard like, just tell me more about your research experience, and it's chill. Some people will ask you to read a paper and then talk through it. I was asked to explain my research proposal, and then in that, if I'd written something, they'd be like, why did you write this and not this? What are the issues with this? Like they took it apart basically, to make sure I understood stuff, and then tested my knowledge of study design and stuff. That's overall how it is. Like it's a bit unstructured at the beginning, and then you apply through the portal.
And would you say like across universities, not just how King's does it, but this is like the general procedure, no matter where you're applying from?
I can't answer that because I don't know. I only applied to one place. I only applied to one place, so I don't know. I think this is really weird though, like this finding a supervisor before you apply. Like for me, it was a really weird concept because I kind of just wanted to apply and let someone judge my CV and then let me go on. But I had to cold email academics basically. Yeah.
And yeah, as you said, with the interview, it's not so much like they're not trying to rip you apart, but the point is also, they want to figure out what it is that you understand and what you know, but at the same time, it's just your ability to explain things and work under pressure when you are being scrutinized. Do you become defensive, or do you take that criticism, take that feedback, and how you move forward with that? So essentially, they are just trying to find holistic students who are there to learn and who can adapt well to changing circumstances. And it's similar, I think, or in a similar vein, I remember seeing a lot of like TikTok videos or whatever of mock like Cambridge interviews, where they sit you down in a room with one interviewer, and they will just ask you a random question about what you've done, and then you have to sit there and explain yourself, and then they'll maybe pick holes in what you said, or they will ask you, they could throw something as simple as, oh, are you sure, is it not this, is it not that? And it's how certain are you of what you know, but how do you respond to what they've said? So it's I understand it's also perhaps a bit difficult to prepare for, because you can prepare your own knowledge, but a certain interviewer will ask a question a certain way. So yeah, I guess for you, actually, that's a question. How would you recommend someone can prepare for an interview like that, apart from just obviously knowing your stuff?
I think just go over anything that you've submitted for any. It's the same thing as any interview advice, like any document which you've submitted to them, whether it's your CV, your personal statement, any supplementary thing that you've submitted. Just go over it and make sure that if someone asks you about any of those points that you've said, you can talk about it. Is the best advice I can give. Other than that, it's completely fine to not know things.
Yeah.
I was asked very specific questions, and they were questions that like I had asked my supervisor, and he was like, "Oh, like you don't even need to know that. Don't worry. We have that's like what statisticians do. That's not your job, and even I don't know that." And I got asked exactly that question in my interview.
Yeah.
So I got asked about power calculations and how they're done, and I was like, "Oh, I literally asked my supervisor to tell me this, and he didn't." But it's fine. You kind of just work on the spot. I said, I don't know, but if I was to guess, it would be these sorts of things. And then they add some information to what you said and then work with you on it. And it's fine, really. Like, even if you don't know things, it's totally fine. It's kind of the point. They don't expect you to know everything.
Exactly. And again, it comes down to demeanor. If you start bullshitting about, the answer and you go, oh, it's this, and it's completely wrong, there's just no point. You may as well just go, honestly, no clue. If you could give me some more information, I'd be happy to work through this, etc., etc. So yeah, it's more of a mindset thing. So, yep. So then you are now at Cambridge. We're fast forwarding to the present day. How? So for people for people that are listening, Cambridge and Oxford are always considered elitist, right? They're considered something that's more like a dream, like a fairy tale, something far away that isn't really attainable, right? But then you have someone like you, a woman of color who has worked relentlessly, right, to get into this position and to be at such a prestigious university. And so whilst you're there, I mean, provided you've only just started, has your perception of Cambridge differed from perhaps what it was before, or what the general stereotype of it is? Or is it exactly as people say and you feel like, the stereotypes are correct?
Yes and no. I do have to say, whether you go to Cambridge, King's, Oxford, Harvard, wherever you go, it's just a place. Like, I definitely romanticized the idea of coming here. I definitely romanticized the idea of studying London. I romanticize everything in my life, to be honest, because that's what makes life fun. But it's not, don't romanticize somewhere and let that be the reason for wanting to go, because at the end of the day, the novelty wears off very quickly. So Cambridge is just a place. Like, yes, people here are intelligent, no doubt about that. People at King's are intelligent. If you're studying a course like physics or medicine, people there are smart. But people also do silly things. They say silly things, and they're normal people as well, So it is really cool, but it's also just like a normal place. So I think there are definitely like some very fairy tale and like Harry Potterish parts of it. But that's not the reality of being here every single day. Like, I don't wear my gown is there. I wear it like maybe once in 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not walking around in it, I'm not like waving my wand around. And also I think because I was living away from home, I was expecting that I would be going out a lot, socializing loads, which I am more than I was when I was living at home. However, because you spend so much of your time studying because of the workload and stuff, like, keep that in mind as well. Like, if you go to a university like Oxford or Cambridge, yes, it's beautiful, it's very fairy tale, but there's a lot of work to do. So realistically, there are some days where I sit in my room and I'm like, did I just move all the way here to come and sit at my desk? I need to get out and see where I am. Like, I moved all the way away from London. Like, I need to go and explore this place. So it's beautiful. I will say that. And I can understand where the like elitist, and I think some people definitely romanticize that like elitist uni vibe, but it is just a place, and getting in is amazing, but you'll feel amazing about getting in anywhere for like a day, and then you actually have to start working, and then that novelty wears off. So that's what I will say. It's just a place.
And I remember someone making like a really good point where it's like fundamentally what you're doing at these universities is all very, very similar, but it's the grade boundaries or the requirements to get into these Russell Group universities is just far higher which is why they have the term Russell Group universities, or why they're considered elite universities. And it's simply just because the it's not like you're not going to Oxford doesn't make you smart. It's technically the smart people get into Oxford because of the fact that they just have much higher requirements to get in, right? So they're choosing the best of the best that are there. But as you said, like fundamentally, a maths degree at Cambridge is going to be the same as a math degree at King's, or a math degree at Loughborough, or anything like that, because what you're being taught doesn't change. The way in which you're being taught perhaps, and the course might differ slightly, but you're not going to change the fundamentals of what you're being taught.
Yeah.
And as you said, like that wears off very quickly once you're at a new place. And I think even for me, like, I absolutely adored Strand campus, right, at King's. I think because it's genuinely in the heart of London. Like Waterloo Bridge, which is right next to Strand, I think is my favourite view in London, because you look on one side and you see London Eye, you see Parliament, you see Big Ben. You look on the other side, you see like the financial high-rises, you see all of the main landmarks in London. And if that's a 5-minute walk from the front door of my building, you do romanticize that, and you think, what a place I'm in. But by second or third year, I was like, it's just another place, right? I'm just here, I'm doing my work, and I'm leaving. And as you said, like, if you're going to Cambridge thinking it's going to be this fairy tale, that could have a shock later on, where once you're there, you're kind of like, well, I'm not really experiencing this fairy tale, I'm just here, I'm putting my head down.
Yeah.
In terms of the demographic of people there, would you still say it's... Because, I mean, if we look at, pictures from 30, 40 years ago, right? If you look at the cohorts at Cambridge, they are very, they're predominantly white. Would you say now that demographic has shifted, or it's shifting? Like, how would you say, like, their intakes have changed?
I would say it's still majority white, and particularly in the STEM subjects, very male dominated.
Yeah.
But I definitely see it, like, I'm sure if you showed me a picture from 50 years ago, it's very different now. And I think in some ways, I'm kind of glad I had this experience, because again, at King's, being part of the Hindu society, I got very comfortable with having friends that I can speak Hindi with, all from the same kind of cultural background. But being here has really forced me it's a completely forced me out of my comfort zone, because there are barely, in comparison, there are barely any Indians here, for example. So the community of Indians that are here are quite tight-knit, but it's really small. And I think I've kind of enjoyed it, though, because my flatmates, for example, I'm the only home student. I'm one of the few home students on the floor, actually. Like, I'm one of the few people who's actually from, brought up in England.
Yeah.
My friend who lives in front of me, she's from the States. Another girl I know is from China. The guy who lives next to me is from Lithuania. So I've actually really enjoyed having, conversations from people with different cultural backgrounds. I just think it's like a different type of fun, I guess, to just hear what they have to say, and their perspectives on everything are quite different. Like, it's just constant culture shocks all the time, which is quite funny. So I really like it, I think.
When you say their perspectives and opinions on things, is that like you kind of listen to their opinion and go, well, that's a bit and you kind of just like smile and wave, or is it just things that are just slightly different that you find amusing?
Funny enough, on our first flat dinner, we all had it literally on my floor over there. We all sat down and we were just having dinner. For the first time, we were all actually properly meeting and in one place.
Yeah.
And the first thing we did was talk about how perspectives on life are different, on the purpose of life are different, where each of us are from. And that was really interesting, because I'm Indian, but I grew up here, but I still feel like I've had a very Indian upbringing. So I was saying that I feel like family is a very big part of life, and it's kind of the center of everything. Whereas my friend who was from the US was like, she was saying that it's not really like that. Particularly, I think there, state to state, it varies as well. but she was saying it's not really like that, and people are shifting away from it, that sort of mindset.
Yeah.
And then, just these types of conversations, what we were having on the first day. And then, like, after that, once we dropped the filter, conversations on politics started. We were like, oh, your country did this, or your country did this, and we don't like you guys. Or this is what the Indian news says about you, or this is what the US news says about you guys. So that was really funny. So it's a good dynamic. I really like my flatmates.
Yeah. And yeah, actually, I completely have the same thing within my like university friend group, or just generally like people I met at university, where the idea of a family centric life is just it doesn't really compute, and that's just not what they've grown up with. Like I've always like the way in which I am very like family orientated. I will always prioritize doing things with my family, or I will always prioritize them over anything that comes up with friends or anything like that. And even like sometimes I'll be like, I don't really want to hang out in the evenings because that's the time where I spend with my family. Yeah, exactly. And, like we'll sit together, we'll have dinner, we'll watch stuff, or we'll just sit and talk right in the evenings. And if my parents have been out working all day, I've been at uni all day, I don't really want to, only have to have a half an hour or 45 minutes in a day to spend with them. I'd like to spend, my evenings with them. And that is just, after coming to university, because again, growing up, in East London, all the demographics, most of the people I meet are Asian, right? So they understand these, and our schedules are aligned because we all, more or less act the same way. But when you go to, university, and it's not even just meeting like people not outside of London. As you said, I have friends from Italy, from Switzerland, from Spain, Indonesia, India, and they're all very varying opinions on a lot of fundamental things, but they're also just things that I hold near and dear to my heart. So yeah, it is like interesting navigating those dynamics as well. And trying to find a balance between, the life you're so used to living. But then you also have to make some compromises. Like, I do go out late sometimes, and I'm like, well, I guess, I won't be spending, today with my family or whatever. But yeah, it is interesting and it's also interesting you say that the majority of people in your course, or at least on your floor at the very least, are international students. I was just thinking back to my degree. And I would say most of the people it was a fairly decent split, I would say, maybe like 50-50, 60-40. And actually, the most shocking thing I think is the gender, like demographic split, because we had a very like inclusive split, considering it was physics. And I would say it was a 60-40 at least, like male to female. Which is absurd because, physics you would think that it'd be very, very male-dominated. But, yeah, no, like I said, it's just... These are all... The reason why I obviously want to ask you these questions is because someone coming to university in general, but also somewhere like Cambridge, you're not really aware of these things. You're not aware of, like, these sorts of dynamics.
This isn't normal for everyone.
Yeah, and no one is really going to tell you these things when you're applying, and... When you have a certain view of university, or of Cambridge especially, these aren't the things you think about. And it also... Now, I remember seeing... This was like a video of, there's a lot more behind the scenes at Cambridge in terms of what your life is as a student and the things that are offered to you that, you're not told beforehand, and you wouldn't know until you get there. And then for a lot of people it's a shock. No, again, I don't know how true this is, but a lot of the events you have at Cambridge, do you have to like pay for certain events?
Yes, you do. Certain events, yes, but there's a lot of free events as well. I think it's the same at King's, like there's free events and you also have to pay for some. The ones which I think are the most, well, I think they're probably one of the more expensive ones, but I do think that, personally, I do think it is worth it, is you might have heard of the Cambridge Union, like the Cambridge and Oxford Union. They host debates and host quite famous speakers. So last week, for example, I went to a talk by Ken Griffin, who is the CEO of Citadel, and he had come. Like, I think that is actually one of the standout things about Cambridge, is that you get these random CEOs and like very interesting people come, and you get to speak to them and hear what they have to say. I'm not sure if you've heard of Simmer Eats.
I haven't.
So Simmer Eats it's a company.
Oh.
It's like, who is she? It's a company. It's like, have you heard of HelloFresh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So HelloFresh delivers ingredients. Simmer Eats delivers meals, and they are I think they are the fastest growing food business in the UK. So I had the CEO of Simmer Eats. I saw him yesterday actually, and we got to speak to him. The thing, that event was free. So, and I also got free food at the end of it, which was great. Big plus. But yes, you do have to pay for some events, and I think the balls are ridiculously priced. But again, same thing in London. Like, why am I paying £80 for a party? You know? Yeah, there are some paid events, there are some free events. I think it's the same as London.
No, it's just because, I mean, the video, the narrative I saw, that there are a lot of events where, because, you know, not everyone coming to Cambridge is in like a super privileged position. You could be getting in, you know, through a scholarship, or you could just, you know, like everyone else does, you slap out in a student loan or whatever, right? And the narrative I heard was like, at Cambridge there are a lot of events that you would think that are free, or that you would think, you know, you would love to do, and it feels like they're almost compulsory, but then you are paying an arm and a leg for that, which is again things that you don't know coming into that. So yeah, I just wanted to figure out the validity of that, because as I said, the more you know, right, before going in to these sorts of universities, and you aren't told these things. Now, speaking of event, what were you saying?
I was going to say, maybe that is the case. I haven't come across it yet. I mean, it's only been just over a month for me, so that might still be true.
Yeah.
But I think even with things like Cambridge Union, they have a scholarship. So if you can't afford the membership, because the actual membership for Cambridge Union is really expensive. It's £350, but it's lifetime. So you can go even once you've graduated. And then I think it's £60 per year or something. But then there's like a talk every single day. There's debates and stuff. So I think it's worth the investment. I haven't bought the membership. You can just pay £20 at the door for one specific talk if you want to go. But again, there is a scholarship available, and something that people also don't know coming in is that you can ask your college for funding. So in Cambridge, we have different colleges, and often they have pockets of funding for specific things. So if you want to go to a certain club and they are asking you to pay like a really high amount, your college might be able to fund that. So just look around for pockets of money, because there are so many. I mean, I got £200 for hosting a Diwali party at Cambridge in my college. So just saying, like, don't be afraid to ask your college for money, because if there is something that's genuinely beneficial for your career, they will probably pay for at least some of it. So just ask.
And especially in an institution like Cambridge, like they've got plenty of money, you know, for the right thing, they would be more than happy to, you know, give out some funds. And actually, speaking of events, one of, I think, the most exciting things you did recently was your performance that I actually also messaged you about. And that was at Cambridge, right?
So, okay, I did perform yesterday as well. But I didn't post that anywhere. I performed yesterday at it was like a Cambridge South Asian. It was like a sangeet, like it was a mock sangeet where I performed yesterday. I've been performing here and there because of being associated with the King's Hindu Society. So I performed at the chapel in Strand. I think the coolest place that I've performed has been the Indian High Commission for Republic Day. Wow. And again, an opportunity that I got through Hindu Society.
The place you performed where I reached out to you and sent you a message, where was that?
That was at King's College Chapel. So in the Strand, there's a welcome event at the start of each year where each of the faith societies gives a speech. But we were different. We wanted to sing a song and we sang an arati. But each society gives like a speech, and then the dean and all these, you know, important people are there to say welcome to the year.
and I mean, I said this to you then as well, and I thought like it was such a full circle moment, like for me, because I mentioned this to you. You know, you used to send me videos of you, playing the guitar in your room, and to see you go from that to performing in front of a large crowd of people, and also as a Hindu as well, like seeing your faith be represented in such a beautiful way in such a prestigious university just shows like the power of diversity and how you can include everyone and really celebrate different faiths and different cultures, and also it shows, as you mentioned, the power of being a part of a society, right? Like the things and the opportunities that can present to you, if you just take that leap, join a society, and as long as you're there, you're dedicated, and you have a great network of people. And that's the other thing, that network, like people don't really understand how beneficial that is, not just from your time at university, but even going forward. And knowing a bunch of people and the opportunity that presents, and I know LinkedIn gets a lot of hate, but if used correctly, that's the whole point of it, right? Where you are actually building connections which presents you opportunities in the future. So the people that go on there and just like boast about crap, I completely understand why they get hated on.
Exactly. I don't know, but the thing is, I have deleted LinkedIn from my phone because I don't want to be scrolling through that every day. But I have it on my laptop and I check it. The thing is, though, I know people take it to heart, but I don't. I just think I just post on there and then I leave. Like I don't sit there and scroll very much on LinkedIn. I just post my thing and I leave. And I think that's probably the best mindset to have. Like do your thing and then close the app.
No, exactly.
And LinkedIn is so useful. Like I don't think I would have got into med school without LinkedIn. Like I said, I didn't even know any doctors. There were no doctors in my family when I applied. So I also couldn't get work experience because it was COVID time. Yeah. So when I was in year 12 and lockdown had happened, what I was doing on LinkedIn is I was just messaging doctors from different specialties on there, like cold messaging them. Like I'll message a radiologist, a psychiatrist, a pediatrician. Hi, my name is Vidisha. I'm in sixth form. Lockdown has happened, blah, blah, blah. I'm part of the medical society at school, and I kind of just wanted to interview you for the medical students applying and hear about your specialty. And that's what I did. Like these random doctors on the internet agreed to let me interview them on Zoom, record it, and broadcast it to the rest of the students applying to medicine. And then on my personal statement, I wrote that. Like I had almost zero work experience. The only thing I had was one afternoon with a nurse. Other than that, I had no connections, so I couldn't get any. Yeah. But through LinkedIn, if people see that you're trying to do something, then actually a lot of people are more than happy to help. Like, yes, a lot of people ignore your messages, but if you use it correctly, it is so, so, so powerful. Yeah. And people also then approach you for things as well. I think even most of the tutoring stuff that I've done has been through people just messaging me on LinkedIn saying, do you want to do this? Yeah.
And like, I mean, not that I want to go for a career in tutoring or teaching, but the amount of tutoring and teaching jobs I get offered on LinkedIn, I don't think I would find organically anywhere else. And I mean, it's a different thing that unfortunately I have to keep on saying no to these people, but it's, like, if used correctly, it's an amazing platform. And I mean, I've only ever posted, I think, once on it, which was when the site I was a part of, we organised like an annual conference where we called on really like Nobel laureates and really distinguished speakers to talk about physics and what they've done. And I was like, yeah, that's something I want to celebrate and talk about. And of course, like, you can make fun of the language and how like formal or pretentious it sounds, but at the end of the day,
everyone knows it's all fake. Like, come on, no one knows. Exactly. Everyone knows I don't always speak. Like, I'm so excited to share that I did this. Like,
it's my
who
privilege,
cares?
And it's an absolute honor. Like, of course, you're gonna speak like that for a specific reason.
I get it. Like, get your bread. Like, get your connections. Do whatever you need to do. I support you. Like, I don't understand why LinkedIn gets so much hate.
I understand, like, like the really silly posts where it'll be like, oh, I proposed to my my girlfriend. I'll explain why that taught me about B2B businesses, and it's like, okay, no, I get why like that gets berated, and rightly so. Like, shut up.
No, that's ridiculous. Like, I hate those posts.
But if you're looking at the grand scheme of like what gets put on there, it's not really that bad. And as you said, yeah, I mean, I have it on my phone just because it's easier for me to go on, but I don't spend time scrolling. Like, I don't care less about the stuff on there. I go on there if someone sent me like a connection. Like, I have notifs off anyway, so like I don't get notifications. I go on it when I want to. But yeah, I'll go on it if there's like a worthwhile connection I need to make. I will accept it, and then otherwise I'll just come off of it. Saying that, or actually for jobs also, like it is a very, like the LinkedIn job section is actually really good. There are plenty of, and a lot of big employers use that. So, or even not even necessarily big, but there are a lot of like mid or boutique firms also that use those services. And so yeah, like if you use correctly, and I think obviously this goes back to any sort of like social media. If you use it as it's meant to be used, as it's intended, it's a very normal app, and it's a very beneficial app, like you said, where you can show that you are trying to get these connections, that you are trying to do something, and it doesn't matter. As you said, you messaged how many, tons of doctors and nurses, but you just need one, right? You need one or two, and that at least shows you've been doing something.
Exactly.
Super off topic. Whilst we're on the question of whilst we're on LinkedIn, I really want to know how LinkedIn is being taught in secondaries right now, because my favorite thing to do
Being taught?
When we were like, at least when I was in year 13, like we were told to make a LinkedIn profile, right?
Oh.
Or I know a lot of high schools do this now, where when kids hit like year 12, year 13, they encourage you to make a LinkedIn profile. I'm really interested though to see how they are like taught, like what they should put on there, and does anyone review these? Because half of the connections I get nowadays are year 12 and 13 students, right? And I've stopped accepting them because and the thing is, I was genuinely gonna make like a series where I just pull up like people's LinkedIn profiles, obviously like blur up their like details, but just this sounds bad. I was gonna call it the LinkedIn Losers series, right? Because genuinely,
no, that's so horrible. Don't do that.
Some of the stuff I see on there makes me cry. Like, I can't. But I'm using my phone as a camera. But
now I'm trying to remember what's on my LinkedIn.
No. But the thing is, one kid. I think he was year 12 or 13, and my favorite thing is when they put like aspiring blah 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 in their like bio.
Yeah.
And it's like, cool, but you're a year 12 student, right? You could be in it. So they'll put like, aspiring aerospace engineer. And it's like, brother, just focus on A-levels, right? Whatever. But then I remember one of these kids put in their work experience that they'd shadowed a doctor. And I was like, oh, cool. And then I read it, and the guy wrote, I attempted to take blood pressure. And I went, what do you mean? What does that mean? How can you attempt to, you either did or you didn't. It's not like rocket science. You put a strap around their arm and press a button, right? So what do you mean?
Okay, here's the thing. Here is the thing. Did you know there's actually a manual way to take blood pressure?
Yeah,
so
the pump,
the machine.
Pump, right?
Not that, but not just. I'm not talking about the machine where it tells you what the blood pressure is. The manual way to take blood pressure, what you do when the machine isn't working, you have your stethoscope and you have to listen to the pulse in your arm with that thing. Right. And you have to listen to it's actually very difficult. So maybe that's what I don't know why a year 12 student would try and do that, because I don't think I could do it correctly for a year of medical school. But hey, I think because they're an aspiring medic, I think they're just trying their best. I don't think they deserve to be roasted. You attempt to take as many blood. I'm still attempting things. We're all attempting things. But maybe don't tell everybody that it was just an attempt.
That's what I mean. Like, at the very least, put I took blood pressure, right? Even if it was an attempt and you failed, right? Just put, I took blood pressure, right? Just, I did this thing. Because no one's gonna no one's gonna say to you, oh yeah, can you demonstrate how you took blood pressure? Like, no one's gonna ask you that. Why would you attempt to take blood pressure? And I can't imagine that he used a stethoscope and listened to, the heartbeat. I'm pretty sure at, 16, 17 years old, no one's going to ask you to do that. Or, maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was like a really complex way of doing it, and that's why he put attempt. But the point being, I get a lot of these where they will write the most absurd. Like, I remember someone did it might have been like a 2 or 3 day like virtual stroke, like maybe 1 day in person, like taste a day or workshop with. It might have been Amazon, or it might have just been something in general. And their end product was to like model something out of Lego, right? I can't remember what they were making. And they start off, I'm extremely proud that we put our blood, sweat, and tears into. And I'm like, you modeled Lego, or like your finished product.
I think that was meant to. I'm like out here defending all these people. Okay, I'm defending them against you because you're being so mean right now. I think it was supposed to be funny and sarcastic, and you didn't get the joke. If they were making Lego, I think they were joking, and you didn't get the joke.
There was like 4 pictures, like 4 or 5 pictures throughout like the 2 or 3 days that they were doing it, and it was like the most gushing, emotional post of like our genuine. There was no sarcasm. It was, we put our blood, sweat, and tears. Nights, like sleepless nights and relentless hard work, and I'm like,
hey, maybe they did. Maybe they really tried.
But this is what I mean. Like, no, like as someone with a brain, but like as an employer, surely you'd look at that and just laugh. Like, you don't look at that and go, "Oh, what an."
You're really not helping. You started by saying like, try on LinkedIn. You're out here laughing at all these people. Like,
no. I think there's a certain level though. Like, you can't. This is what gets laughed at. I think if you're just putting a post being like, I like, thank you for your help. This was just tough, but it also like depending on the situation, right? Like the conference we put together is like 6-7 months of like genuine rough, like it's hard work to organize. It's a completely free event as well. We don't charge anyone for it, so we have to secure like $2,000 of funding. You have catering. You have like 6 different universities doing societies doing workshops. Like that is hard work, right? That could give you sleepless nights. If you're doing a 2-day virtual stroke in-person workshop where you're modeling Lego, you have to really understand the language you're using, right? Like,
if you're drowning in 6 meters or 6 feet, you're still drowning. Okay, let them struggle. Let them do their Lego. Let's be nice people today. I don't want to be mean.
I just think there needs to be some sort of like a regulation.
I think you should start like a how to make a LinkedIn profile podcast or like series.
I'm gonna start my LinkedIn losers series.
No, not that.
Where I have their profile up, all the like name blurred and whatever, and I'll go through critiquing what I find is funny, and then I'll say, let's not do this, let's do this instead.
There's the one with one post on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
don't you think you should be
posting
more to be able to criticize other people?
One post about the one good thing I did, which I think warranted a LinkedIn post. I didn't bother anyone. I didn't do. Actually,
no one is being bothered. It's just a post. It's just did reading that disrupt your life? You laughed.
It made me laugh, but like. I'll be honest, it gave you like a lot of entertainment at the same time.
Yeah, let them live, let them do their thing.
I just feel like in today's like market, right, which is like the job market is already so like you're struggling. You don't need to make yourself look like a joke by like over exaggerating what you're doing. I think you need to exaggerate hands down. Like I've done 2 posts so far, and there is exaggeration in there, but just like be a bit more smart about what you're talking about and how you talk about it is my point. So, apologies for that interruption and that random cut. I had some sort of power surge. I don't know. It seems to have fixed itself, but we'll wait and see.
It was a sign. It was a sign from the gods that we need to not be mean.
Yeah, I apologize to all the people I made fun of on LinkedIn. Clearly, this was karma, and this is the immediate after effect of being mean. So I won't take the piss out of anyone on LinkedIn ever again. But yeah, so what we were speaking about though is how LinkedIn is a good platform for you to grow your network, whether you are in A-levels, whether you're in university, or just generally if you are. Also for like experienced professionals, whether you're in a well-established job or not, it's still a way for you to make new connections, to grow and to find more opportunities. So, yeah. And so, yeah, in terms of you at Cambridge right now, would you say, as a woman of colour, right, this process has been maybe more difficult, maybe a little bit easier. And I say that also because schools like, I'm sure everyone's heard about Brampton Manor Sixth Form, right? They send the most students to Oxbridge out of, I think, any sixth form in the country. Now, I think there are a lot of reasons. I mean, of course, they're all exceptional students who meet those requirements, but there are also, other factors of where that school is located, who you are as a person, and what you've done. So, do you think, as a woman of color, that's benefited you, or how's that process been? Do you think it's been more challenging?
In terms of benefit, I think it's hard for me to say just because of the type of course that I'm on. Like I said, it's not very structured. And I am the only person working on my project. Like, I'm the most junior person. I'm the only person they took.
Yeah.
So I have no idea how many other people had emailed in or how that went. So I honestly can't say. I like to think it was based on research experience because I had spent a whole year doing it, and after a lot of interviews with myself, like we decided that I would be a good fit for the team.
Yeah.
So I think I think everyone who gets in has a credibility to get in.
Of course, yeah.
But in terms of the difficulties, I think there are some slight differences, like we were talking about before, in culture, which does make it challenging to be a woman, and B, especially a woman of color. I mean, I'm the only person of color in my team.
Yeah.
There are very few people of color in academia in general, but particularly the specialty of medicine that I'm in at the moment. I think what's challenging is things like, for example, after work, or for a work social, everybody wants to go to the pub. Like, that's like the go-to decided place. Like, everyone's going to go to the pub and everyone's going to have beer. And I feel like that's kind of how they bond, is over a pint of beer. And I personally don't drink out of personal choice. And also just going to the pub with mostly grown men does feel a bit uncomfortable for me. And like the pub environment, I'm just not a fan. I don't really like it. So things like that, I think, are a bit different. I mean, I don't mind. It's a work social. It's twice a month or something. I'll just go there and it's fine. But I remember the last work social that we had, this person is actually my friend. Like, she's a good friend of mine. But she was so confused at the fact that I had ordered lemonade, like just lemonade. She was like, "Oh, you got lemonade. Lemonade with what?" I was like, "Oh, just lemonade." And she was like, "Just plain lemonade?" As if I had ordered like plain rice or like plain pasta with no sauce. How she would speak, she was like, "Are you sure? Like, is it because it's cheaper? Like, is it because you don't want to spend the supervisor's money?" I'm like, "No, I just don't want to drink." Why would you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel like it.
Yeah.
And then she was like, "Do you want to try some of mine?" And I just said, I just said I don't drink. She's like, "Oh, it doesn't count if you're just tasting it." And I was like, "Oh my god, bro! Like, I just don't want to." Okay, it's enough of a reason.
And I've always been super vocal about how much I dislike the drinking culture in this country. And as you said, it's like people don't understand how to live life or how to socialize without alcohol. And it's almost, and obviously the adverse is when you say you don't drink is you're looked at as boring, or they don't know how to have fun. And it's like, why does me being pissed out of my head, or why does me being drunk have anything to do with me having a fun time? But unfortunately, you said it's not even so much the drinking alcohol, it's the act of going out drinking. And as you said, when you go to a pub, that's where you socialize. And so if you say no to those things, unfortunately you are missing out. And it's a mindset thing, and it's something that I hope as the years go by we slowly shift away from that. But then at the same time, I think drinking culture is so rampant in this country. It's going to be a long time before that completely shifts to moving away from pubs. And it's such a big part of British culture, going to a pub after work. I mean, if you go into central London and anywhere like where you have offices, you go, if you're walking around at 5-6 p.m, you see like 30, 40 people outside of the pubs. Like the pubs are overflowing because that's just a natural thing to do.
Yeah.
And as you said, like as a woman of color, and what you also spoke about with being the only woman of color in your, in your team, that like also really hits
Yeah.
home, because I was part of the Women in Physics Society at my university, and the whole point was to uplift and to promote, women in STEM, but in physics in general. And when you actually take a look at it, you understand how underrepresented, not only women are, but women of color are in particular. And that's also why I thought it was so important to speak to you, because we need to champion the people that are in those positions, but also shed light on the fact that we need more of these. It's not because there is a lack of a women of color who want to do want to go into medicine or want to go into these positions. It's because the system doesn't promote that. The system doesn't really, it favors a certain demographic of people over others. And so the more we speak about it and the more we show that yes, it is possible through, of course, it's going to take hard work, but it takes hard work from everyone. But it is possible, and we shouldn't have the mindset where you shy away from it thinking, oh, I'll never get in. Because there are a lot of, young girls who will think, oh, I want to go to Cambridge, and think, oh, but I would never get in, it's not something for me. But, that's not the mindset to have, you can go for it. And you are living proof of that, so that is incredible. But, yeah, now just moving to the future. So, I assume this is of course a year, right? Your research. So, have you started to think, seeing how proactive you've been so far? I assume you do have some future plans. So, what are you thinking about after your year at Cambridge?
So I have to go back and finish my medical degree because it's quite weird because I'm a postgrad without an undergraduate degree.
Right,
So
yeah.
I need to go back and finish medical school. I have 2 years left, and then I have 2 years of foundation training to make sure I get my license in the UK. And honestly, after that, it's funny. I feel like this is bringing us full circle to where we started the conversation about in year 12 not really knowing what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
I feel like that's me now, that I know I want to do medicine, at least part-time, but I know that I need to do something else with medicine. I can't just do it by itself. So whether that's research, whether that's teaching, whether that's like an entrepreneurial venture, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of just exploring my options at the moment, and I plan on continuing medicine alongside that.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, there is so much you can do with medicine, right? You're not, it's not a niche by any means, and you're not stuck doing a specific thing. So whether it is you want to specialize further within a certain branch of medicine, or whether you want to, do something else with it, as you mentioned, teaching, there are plenty of things that you could go into. And I think that's also the beauty of the physics degree I did, where I can apply it to a lot of things. I'm not sidelined into doing physics, and I'm of course very vocal on the fact that I don't want to ever have to look at a physics paper again in my entire life, so at least I'm never going to go do physics again. But I can, there are plenty of things I can do, whether that's teaching, whether that's finance, anything really, apart from probably being a doctor. I don't think I have the credentials or the brain power for that. But no, like I said, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you and seeing your journey. And of course, it hits home more from me because I've seen, we've grown up together almost. I've seen you from such a young age go from strength to strength. And it's a proud feeling to have someone that I know in such a position in Cambridge, but also knowing that, you're not just stopping here, you're still aiming to do more. And I have no doubt in my mind that you'll go and achieve many, many good things. If I'm not mistaken, you also have a Instagram account where you document your journey?
Yes, I do. I've literally just started it, and it's still very much early days. I do have an Instagram account. It's called Dr. Kaur, DoctorKoor, and Kaur. Everyone asks me like, "What is that? That's not your surname, is it?" So Kaur is a word in Kashmiri, and I'm from Kashmir in India, which means like daughter or girl. It's like what like your grandma would call you, like, oh, you're a Kashmir, like, or like a Kashmiri like beti, basically.
Right, yeah.
And because my family has made a lot of sacrifices and they've done a lot for me, I just thought it would be nice to pay tribute to that, I guess. So that's my Instagram name. If anybody would like to follow along the journey and see what
Well,